for being here. I should join with the thousands of others who have congratulated those students who took the National Grade 6 Assessment examination and did so well. I want to particularly congratulate Tanasha Myers for the perfect score. But there are so many others who did exceedingly well. And it's very pleasing for us in the government. The number of children who did well this year went up considerably. And this is a testimony to their hard work and the hard work of the education sector professionals who work with them. And therefore, we need as a country to appreciate all of the efforts that were made to achieve this level of success. I'm happy because the investments that we are making in the education sector will continue to provide our children opportunities to succeed in life. And I recall years ago when the PPP first took office, 35% of the students taking the common entrance examination at that time could have been placed in secondary schools. The rest had to go to community high schools or the top of primary. And if they remain in the primary school or went on to a community high school, they did not go on to write the CXE. So it meant that 65% of the children who were taking the common entrance examination at the tender age of 10 or 11 were deemed failures in life because they were not going to write the CXE, and you need the CXE either to get a job or to go on to tertiary education. So they were judged at this tender age and practically discarded, and many of them dropped out of school and or chose some other pathway, a non-academic pathway. I'm so pleased now that because of the investments we have made over the years, building more secondary schools across the country, incentivizing private education, we've removed the corporate tax from private education, that now all of the students who took the NGSA this year, by the time they're ready to write the CXE, whether they got 50% or over 50% or less than 50% at this assessment, they'd all go on to write the CXE. Because by the time they're ready to do that, they reach the age to do that, we'd have universal secondary education. We'll be able to place all the kids in secondary schools, and these kids would go on to write the CXE. So 100% of the kids doing the NGSA will be able to write CXE. And so we're giving every child an opportunity to succeed. And we're not only going to give them the opportunity to write the CXC, but also the government will pay for 8 subjects for each child, up to 8 subjects for each child, both in the public sector and the private sector, who will be taking the CXC. So I don't want people to see those kids who did not get high marks here as failure, because this exam really is just an exam because we've had limited space in the past. But in the future, all of the kids would be able to go on to write the CXC. And that's how I see it, because at this age, the children should not be judged so definitively on the basis of their performance at one exam. This is something we're looking forward with great enthusiasm to invest in. You know, the budget for education has grown under this government from 53 billion to 185 billion. We have hired 3,000 more teachers than we had in 2020. We have a complement of about 15,000 teachers. We've got the ratio down from about maybe 13 teachers for 13 children to 1 teacher, down to about 12 now. One of the lowest figures in the world. So, and this was all done to get more personalized attention to our children. Now, we've had variable performance because in spite of that. So we are looking forward to the introduction of the digital school in the next term in office. We're looking forward to using international resources, online tools, and artificial intelligence to tailor individualized, personalized training programs and tuition programs for our kids, because with AI, now you can have a personalized program for every child, every single child, in primary school and in secondary school, that would cater for their strengths and weaknesses, that would assess them and then craft a program that is unique to their strengths and also can address their weaknesses. This is an exciting field for the future, and that is something that we are working towards. And so we have already mapped this out, what we hope to achieve in the next 5 years in the education sector. When we say world-class education, we have already made university education free and other tertiary level training free. We're paying for the exams. We're now going to assist with transportation for children through a grant in the next term, so that we can remove the burden from their parents so that they can get to school. We'd expand school feeding program, and then this exciting curriculum development or reform, transforming the way we deliver education. We plan for and deliver education to our children. And a lot of it would be individualized, personalized education. So every single child in the country can have their own program that will allow them to succeed. Because often that's missed in the classroom. You know, children do not get the personalized attention that they need in the classroom. So I'm looking forward to the reform in education, and to how we can utilize the skills of all of our people, including all of our children. Once again, congratulations to everyone, and even those who did not do so well. You know, it's not the end the way we see it. It's just an exam. It's just one exam in your entire life. A lot of them are late bloomers. A lot of the children are late bloomers. They do extraordinarily well, later in life, and especially now that they're going to still go on to write the CXC, and they're going to get the best quality tuition to do that. I hope that the parents will continue, and I want to recognize the parents too. I know a lot of, particularly mothers, who have been with their, they were more stressed maybe than the kids who are taking the exams. Their parents are very stressed out, they are worried. The stressful work was with the children, of course, fetching all these big book bags and taking extra lessons and all of that stuff. But the parents were anxious, and we recognize that too, and we thank them for the effort that they've put behind these kids, taking them out, taking them to extra lessons, supporting them at home. It's a major effort on their part, and I want to congratulate them too. Last week, was it last week? I'm losing time. We had, as a party, a fundraising dinner at Lenora. It was massive. About maybe 8,000 people got there, and participated in the dinner, and maybe another 2,000 had to turn back. They could not get there on time because of the traffic jam. So a fundraiser with about 10,000 people. It's the biggest, I would think, anywhere in this region. And I want to thank the people from Region 3, the activists there, who managed to pull this off. It's not easy to feed that amount of people and have them be satisfied in such a short period of time, or put together the logistics, and they did. They did. And it shows the maturity of the People's Progressive Party, and the tens of thousands of people who were willing to assist. In that region alone, to pull this off, we had nearly 1,500 volunteers who worked diligently to pull that off. And I don't think any political party here, or I dare say in the Caribbean, could have pulled off an activity of that nature the way we did. However, you had a lot of traffic jam on the road. I took several hours myself, even with Cyrene, to get through. And I want to apologize to all of the people who were stuck on the road. I don't think the arrangements were in place, and then at one stage you had 4 lanes of traffic going in one direction on a road that is a 2-lane road. And so I want to once again apologize for any inconvenience caused to people. I don't think they anticipate that level of success. And also to thank everyone who attended the dinner and the volunteers there. Similarly, at Everest, thousands were there too, from Region 4 for our dinner, and then fundraising dinner, and then tomorrow again at the convention center. And we paid for the use of the the lawns of the convention center, not the convention center itself. We paid to use the lawns. We're putting together our own arrangements there. So tomorrow there'd be another massive fundraiser. And the fact that people are willing to come and support the party, it's not large sums of money, but they're willing to come out. We appreciate that and support the party. It is also a testimony to the changes that people have seen in their communities and their lives since the PPP got into office. We will launch our campaign in early July. You'd hear more about that. Formally launch our campaign. We are currently in the process of vetting candidates, and that is a major undertaking in a party where you often have, for every list, maybe 400 or 500 people more who want to get on the list than you have space for. Some political parties can't get people to go on their list. They're having a hard time to get candidates and backers. Some of them have been calling one political party as a criminal enterprise linked to it, is calling people. Up to yes, someone called me, one of our activists, and said, a person got a call out of the blue to say, would you be on our list? They're looking for people to be on their list because people are afraid of being sanctioned or getting into trouble. They don't want to get on any list that will cause them to be sanctioned. And so we, in the party, it's a major undertaking because like everyone wants to be on the list and you have to, disappoint some people and because you have limited space. And so we are engaged in that process. We're trying to do it in a democratic way, consulting with the activists, the party activists and others, supporters on the ground across all 10 regions. And we're now going through the final stages of that process. Similarly, we are getting the list of backers using GCOM's prescribed form, which has a declaration at the top that you're knowingly and willingly signing to support the list of candidates for a particular political party. This is essential given what has happened in the past and what we hear is happening now, until now, that people are still being misled. Some people are paying to get backers and some are being misled still. They don't show people the form. I hope that GCOM would rigidly enforce that the appropriate form is used. Because in the past, as we know, they would go with a blank sheet, just get people to sign off on the blank sheet of paper, and then add a covering letter. And many of those people never even knew that they were supporting a list of candidates for a particular political party. They may not even support that party. So we are ensuring that this is done properly in the People's Progressive Party. We are ready. We have identified a date in July in which we had launched our manifesto, and we have been speaking about a lot of the things that we intend to do. I will talk a bit more about that later. So we're not saving all of our manifesto ideas for an event. In fact, we have been speaking about all that we plan to do in the next 5 years since maybe a year ago. So some parties are saving it for an event. They just get other people to do their content, like their manifesto. I saw Nigel Hughes now is in a big controversy with an individual who said that she wrote several elements of what they're promising as part of their manifesto, and they didn't pay her for it. And he has now come out and said that they're subjected to blackmail and all of that. You wouldn't have that controversy in the People's Progressive Party because we don't outsource the development of our manifesto to single individuals who sit like they're writing a term paper or a long paper for a degree. Where it's organic in the PPP. We assess what needs to be done as a country, and then we prepare the plans accordingly. So I was extremely pleased that the Chief of Staff clarified one issue in his interview on the national security series that they're doing. And that is the issue of Venezuelan migrants in Guyana. For a long time, it has been peddled that we are not aware of the magnitude of the presence of the Venezuelan migrants here, and that we are not paying enough attention to the national security threat that this poses to Guyana. And Brigadier Khan made it clear that the migrants are carefully vetted by state agencies. Further, we have major intelligence operations in communities that focus on any threat to our national security arising from Venezuelans and other migrants. And we are taking this threat seriously. So what we've been hearing from a lot of people, from the social media, etc., is just not true. We can't speak all the time about everything that is being done because a lot of it is done in a covert fashion. In a manner, if you're gathering intelligence, you don't go and publish the intelligence that you gather in the newspapers or put it on social media. But I can assure you, as he did, that this is being done. And we take the presence of the Venezuelan migrants in Guyana seriously. But we also, as he pointed out, we want to be compassionate too. Because at various times in our history, our people sought economic refuge in Venezuela, in Suriname, and many parts of the world. And we expected those governments to treat them with dignity and some form of compassion. So we can't be xenophobic, but we have to be mindful of the threat. So we can be compassionate, we can be accommodative, but at the same time, we can protect our country. And what we are doing now with the national ID card would give us even a greater tool to manage the presence of foreigners in our country in a very clear and methodical way. And what is it I'm talking about? I'm speaking of something that many people have already spoken about. I have myself addressed this issue right here, that we are working with a company now from the UAE and Germany to develop a high security national ID card that will be issued to every Guyanese within a year, that they can use when coming in at the airport. They can swipe the card and come in, the Guyanese. They would use this card to open bank accounts. They may get the biometrics collected there would also help with digital banking, a whole range of other services. But every foreigner or everyone else who is non-Guyanese will have to have a residency card with the same security features and their biometrics too. If you don't have that, and you're living in our country, you would have a hard time opening a bank account. In fact, there would be a prohibition on you opening a bank account without that card. Or employers here would have to ensure that people have that card. So at any given moment, we will know about all the people who are in our country, who are non-Guyanese, wherever they're from. And we will have their biometrics too. So when we put in the 3,000, 4,000 security cameras across the country, we'd be able to tell you exactly where they are at any moment. And that is being worked on now, and within a year, everyone would have, you either have one of these two cards. A Guyanese will have a different color card, citizen of Guyana, and those who are resident but not citizen would have another card. And this would allow us to track presence and also to know how many people are in our country who are non-Guyanese, and we'd be able to monitor their presence here. Now, there are lots of Venezuelans. We differentiate again who are of Guyanese heritage, who are, according to our constitution, they are Guyanese. They can get an ID card or a passport immediately. That's the constitution of Guyana. The PPP can't change that, APNU can't change that. That's in our supreme law. So sometimes people see someone who may look slightly different, but their father or mother or grandmother or grandfather is Guyanese. And according to our constitution, we don't have a choice. We have to give them the citizenship. So that's clear. Let me be clear. But I wanted to draw attention back to this issue because too many people, and people justifiably so, they see a lot of people on the street and they're concerned whether the government is paying serious attention to this issue. And I can assure you, it's not only going to be for Venezuelans, but you know about the Chinese in the country and the Indians in the country and the Africans in the country and everyone else who are non-Guyanese. We'll know once the cards are issued. And we'll have a period in which they can get the card. And if they don't go and secure the card, well, they would face law enforcement sanctions. So I just wanted to address that issue. The president has asked the police to also speak on some matters. And so I expect shortly, consistent with the President's instructions, that we will be hearing more from the police, like we heard from the Chief of Staff. And the police force has had an enormous level of success in addressing crime in Guyana. The other law enforcement agencies dealing with fighting transnational crime, particularly drug trafficking, they too have had enormous successes in fighting narco-trafficking. This is acknowledged even in the United States, the reports coming out from the United States of America, the large seizures that have been done in Guyana, and the collaboration between the DEA and our local agencies dedicated to fighting drug trafficking. But sometimes these achievements get overshadowed by legitimate concerns of people, and those concerns are not addressed, and sometimes the concerns are exploited by those hostile to the government. And so when you see a GHRA accusing the PPP government of being as dictatorial as Burnham, so they're comparing us with Burnham now, saying that Burnham had the party flag flying over the High Court of Guyana, the court. So that's one. Two, that Burnham was involved in control of the police force, control of the judiciary. Burnham rigged elections to stay in power, and that the PPP is like Burnham. This is GHRA. Well, the GHRA in those periods were probably complicit with Burnham. If you look at the people, the current leadership of the GHRA, they were complicit with Burnham in taking away our freedoms, rigging elections, controlling the judiciary, and using the police force and the army as coercive arms of the PNC, not even of the state, because the army, we have these images where the army used to seize the ballot boxes at polling places, fetch them away. In Berbice, 2 of our activists were shot by the army and killed when they tried to prevent the army from seizing the ballot boxes and then changing the votes. If you read the Commission of Inquiry into the death of Walter Rodney, not the death, the killing of Walter Rodney, the Independent Commission of Inquiry pointed out that this was done by Burnham and the PNC because he posed a threat to the People's National Congress. So they utilize elements within the police force and the army to kill a political opponent. Walter Rodney, for those of you who are young and don't know, was one of our preeminent scholars, global scholar, who came back to Guyana to fight the dictatorship. He was denied lots of opportunities here. He was from the WPA, and he was the only real leader of the WPA, not these useless people who are now collaborating with his killers. David Hines and the others are collaborating with the killers of Walter Rodney because it was the PNC that the Commission of Inquiry pointed out, that killed Walter Rodney. So the GHRA, with knowing all of this, compare the PPP with Burnham. We're Burnham now. We're the party that has fought for democracy all of our lives, throughout our entire history. We never sought to rig elections or steal people's votes. In 2015, when the difference that separated the two parties was like 4,600 votes, we walked away peacefully. 4,600 votes is all the difference that separated us. And we walked away peacefully. That's our history. Two, we don't direct the judiciary. We have put back an independent judiciary in place. The reason that Burnham took us out of the Privy Council was that there would be no external review of decisions made in the judiciary, because if he had rigged the elections here and we had filed a case with the Privy Council, they would have probably ruled that he was rigging elections in Guyana. So he did not want that to happen. The Court of Appeal in Guyana became a final court and was controlled entirely by the PNC. When I was president, we signed on to the Caribbean Court of Justice, an external body that could review decisions made in Guyana if they're made, political decisions are made by the judiciary, or suspect decisions are made, or wrong decisions, then they could have an external review. So we wanted an independent judiciary. And we don't direct the police. So we get blamed now because the police force dug up some old law that we didn't even know existed, blasphemous libel, and charge an entertainer with it. We get blamed because the police again instituted the wrong charge against Rickford Burke when they should have gone for extortion, not libel, because they have evidence of extortion. He was trying to hustle money from a businessman. We have irrefutable evidence of that. They filed the wrong charges. And the fact is that in both cases, for the blasphemous libel, it was the judges or the magistrate that sent the entertainer to prison, and then he went back to the same judiciary and got bail without interference from the state. And it was the same in this Rickford Burke case. It was the Chief Justice of Guyana who pointed out that you can't get Rickford Burke on that. You have to charge him on another, or use another law if you're trying to get him to Guyana to face the criminal action. That is I think it's a Criminal Fugitives Act. You have to use that act to get him. But point out the mistake again made by the police in charging him. Not that he is not a criminal. He is. He was trying to extort anyone, but they used the wrong law. So it was the judiciary in a free country, an independent country, that acted and ruled against the government. You think you could have ruled against Burnham? Their judges would have been in trouble already. And we accepted the Chief Justice's ruling, and they have to abide by it. That's the element. That's how a democracy functions. But they now say it is the government, not the police. That's why I'm so pleased that the president has asked the police force to do more. They need to come and talk about these matters, because we get blamed for any incompetence or at the political level. Although you try to act professionally, you get blamed for the incompetence there, and sometimes the mistakes there. And for example, they need to answer why there was someone lied about the Adriana Young matter. We didn't tell them to do that, to lie about somebody saw this child leaving. It was a blatant lie. I questioned that as General Secretary of this party and the Vice President the same day, to say it's a blatant lie. And so these matters, I'm so pleased that the President has instructed that they address these matters directly. Traffic matters, all of these issues. And then when they address these things that are the few issues, these few issues are elevated by our opponents as though that's the prevailing state of affair in terms of law and order. And then you miss all the achievements of the police force, the real achievements. Hard-working policemen and policewomen solving crimes across our country, keeping order in the country, ensuring that people are safe in their communities, going after criminals in our country. They're charging them, getting convictions for them. This is important. And you have a ton of achievements in the last 5 years. They got more resources, they got better training, and they did better than maybe in a long time before that. And we miss all of that because our opponents elevate these few things as though this is the police force and there's distrust with the police force. So they need to address these things frontally and then talk about their own achievements. The police need to do that. But because they don't talk enough, these naysayers go after them all the time. And so I'm so pleased that this is happening. And we in Guyana now, this is an extraordinarily free country by any metric. Any metric. You look at the social media, you look at freedom of the press in Guyana, you look at the independence of the judiciary. These are the important elements of any free country. And no one can say that there's any attempt by the government to take away people's freedom in that regard. There are lots of other things that I want to talk about, a function in parliament, etc., as one of the features of a free country. So GHRA, a PNC unit like the others, have now suddenly awoken. They were not concerned. Now they're concerned about Rickford Burke charge. When Rickford Burke has been engaged in criminal extortion, trying to hustle money from the businessman, that didn't go away. They have the evidence of that. You have a witness who said it was Rickford Burke that told me to do this. They have that, statements, etc. GHRA is not concerned about that. They're concerned that the wrong charge was filed and that it's the PPP that is becoming like Burnham that caused this charge to be filed. They're not concerned about the vile racist sentiments expressed over the years by this low-life person. They're concerned, PPP is becoming dictatorial. Ask them about Father Dark. Who killed Father Dark? You ask apart from Walter Rodney. I'm going to speak a bit about Albion. I was at Albion to address some of the sugar workers. So it gave me an opportunity to talk a bit about sugar. And as I was preparing on the way up, I was thinking about where we were in Berbice 5 years ago and how much has changed. Even I forgot about how bad it was, because sometimes when you are busy, you tend to maybe not pay attention to some things that happened in the past. Or maybe it's just that I wanted to shut out a bad memory. Sometimes it happens. So once again, in the sugar belt, they are trying to create dissatisfaction. It's not going to work this time around like they did in 2015. And so the rumors abound. You're supposed to get more money from the government. You're supposed to get, that's with the sugar workers, or a whole range of other benefits. So I had to point out to the sugar workers. And the same people who are carrying this message carried the message in 2015, trying to mislead the sugar workers. In fact, a lot of them were APNU and AFC sympathizers. So they said to some of the sugar workers who were strong supporters of the PPP, we're not going to vote in 2015, and hoping that the people, because we're dissatisfied, encouraging the others not to vote too. And then they showed up and voted for APNU and AFC. They made a ton of promises, 20% increase per year, no closure of the estates that we are lying. And then I pointed out to the sugar work. So in my speech, I said, do you remember what happened in that period? APNU, AFC, as soon as they got into office, without any studies, although they promised to expand sugar, to give the 20%, they started closing estates. They took a political decision to do that. Over 7,000 sugar workers were sent home. They took all the assets of Gaisuco and transferred it to NISIL. So Gaisuco was left with all of the liabilities, but the assets of Gaisuco were transferred to NISIL. They took a bond, or they borrowed through a bond over $17 billion. They drew down the money. We ended up in our period having to pay back most of the money from the bond that the loan that they took. They took a lot of the assets at Wales. They handed the land out to people, a few people, big plots of land. We have to take back those lands now to build 14,000 homes get 14,000 house lots for the people in Region 5. That's what they did with the land, handed it out to a few people. They took the housing units at Wales. They sold this all out to individuals, many associated with their PNC, AFC, APNU AFC. The factory was sold off as scrap metal not through a tendered process. They gave it to an individual. The factory disappeared. Everything disappeared there at Wales. At Enmore, they leased out all of the estate houses, the people as linked to the PNC, etc. In Rose Hall, They sold off all of the equipment. They were selling a big tractor for, like a massive tractor, for a couple $100,000. These things are worth $10 million, etc. I have a long list of the equipment and to whom they sold. Just sold out all the assets there. Rosal, close it down. You remember Skeldon, Nagamotu had one of his relatives looking for a buyer for Skeldon. That was their history. So they took all the assets from Gaisuko, put it in Nissel, sold off, and then took the assets and pledged it to raise $17 billion. So no money came from the treasury into the industry. Some of those lands were sold by Jordan, right here at Ogle. They didn't even collect the money, but they transferred title to the land. One man got 200 acres. He paid $100 million. They didn't even tell him where the land was. Right at Ogle there. He's still looking for the land there at Ogle through a lease from. That was the state of affairs with Gaisuko's assets. They had intended not just to shut those estates, but everyone. So Albion and the others and Iflot and Blaemont would be on the chopping block. So that was the state. They were intent on closing sugar. People don't remember all of these things. They were just getting rid of all of Gaisuko's assets to friends and family, basically. To friends and family. And I can trace it back if I have more time another day. So that was the state of affair. Since we got into office, so let me don't even deal with when we get in. The sugar workers, for 5 years, those remaining, those who were fired, many could not receive their severance. Minister Holder said, we can't give you your money because you'll spend it out. Now, severance pay is related to the years of service. It's by law. You should get your money when you are severed. You should not. No minister can tell you, oh, we can't give you all of the money because you'd spend it out, your severance pay. I recall the workers from Wales couldn't receive their severance pay. They came to Parliament one day when we were in Parliament. We joined them in the protest outside of Parliament. They had to protest for something that they're legally entitled to according to law under APNU. Then, in the 5 years under APNU, they got 0 salary increase in all 5 years. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's the salary increase the sugar workers got after being promised 20% per year. So when we got back in office in 2020, it was the same salary that they were getting like in 2015 when we left office. No increase in salary for the people who were doing the work in the fields, the remaining ones. So that's their track record. Since we got back, now we've reopened Rosal, consistent with our promise. They've gotten a salary increase for every year. We, in opposition, we promised, like what we did with the bauxite workers, we gave them when we had to sever through the arrangement that Hoyt had through the Sismin program. We gave them an additional sum of money on top of their severance. We had promised those workers, we gave them. When they had outer crop at Iflot, we gave them some money for the outer crop season. They couldn't find work, not outer crop, they didn't work the first crop. Similarly in Albion, we've done the same thing there. We've injected more money back into the sugar industry, given its multifunctional nature. Berbice now has new life has been breathed back into Berbice because it used to be like a dead area from all the way from Mara to Crabwood Creek. Because if you take sugar's income out of out of the regional economy. It affected everyone, all Barbadians. So when you talk about commitment, I don't know what they're going to tell the sugar workers. They're going to tell the sugar workers. And so they go back now and spread rumors again. What could Norton say or Nigel Hughes say to the sugar workers of the country? Nothing. They can't say anything. I see the sanctioned individual as Rudin Mohammed. He's been going in the sugar belt. But what would he say to them? Nothing. He can't say anything. Oh, the PPP is sanctioning me, complaining about himself all the time. Nothing of substance. Nothing of substance. And so when I went there at Albion, I had to remind people about this, because too often we forget in a short period of time what has happened. And it's not unique to the sugar industry. What I'm talking about here is not unique to sugar. It also happened with the miners who are supportive of APNU. I've many times pointed out what they did to the miners. They promised the miners to reduce taxes, to work with them, give them all the incentives, and then increase the tributers tax, increase the royalty. They put VAT on machinery and equipment. You had to bring your equipment out to get licensed to Georgetown. You had to, if you had to transport 2 gallons of gasoline, you had to get government permission. They just shafted the mining industry too, and all the miners who supported them. Every sector I can talk about. The Amerindians, different groups. So this is important. We have to sometimes speak about these things and remind people, especially in an era now when we are going to have a whole range of new promises being made to people. Everybody is making a promise. So we need to address that. So talking about promises, I saw this headline, Guyana Standard, Granger to young voters, don't be swayed by rhetoric and empty promises. And I couldn't agree with Granger more. I agree that young voters, but not just young voters, any voter should not be swayed by rhetoric and empty promises, like what Granger made in 2015 and what APNU, AFC, and the others are making now. The empty promises and the rhetoric. You remember Granger's rhetoric about jobs for young people on the platform? He was all over the country and the others. Young people are going to lead, jobs for young people. What happened? Ask us how many jobs were lost under Granger. 35,000 before COVID in all the sectors. In sugar, in the retail trade, in the mining sector, in everything, in every sector. That was rhetoric, empty promise. You remember Granger saying the burden of taxation is too high, and all of his people talking about taxation policy. Look at their manifesto. It was his manifesto. What happened? They increased taxes, over 200 taxes and fees, collected $94 billion more per year because of increased taxes. Empty promise and rhetoric again. You remember Granger talking about doubling old age pension. What happened in the 5 years, in 100 days? That's true in his manifesto. What happened? 5 years passed, they didn't do it. Granger talking about respect for our joint services and, working to enhance the benefits to the police and soldiers, etc. The first year, they said they took away the 1 month tax-free bonus from the joint services, claiming it was a bribery by the PPP. That's what the Minister of Finance said, Jordan said. It was an empty promise again, rhetoric. And I can go down the long list that the promises Granger made. The jobs, he said to people, you know, the government can create jobs. That was what he said in an interview. You can do the pepper sauce and I don't remember what else. You can do pepper sauce to create jobs and stuff like that. It's so petty. But empty promises. And he says this now, so I agree with him. But that's what his party is all about. And then, in the next breath, after saying this, saying that don't be fooled by empty promises and rhetoric, all of which is coming now from the opposition. They're promising free university education. When we did that already. Just empty promises, rhetoric, all of it. As I said before, Nigel used and got somebody else to write his manifesto. The APNU is using AI to generate, plugging in stuff that the PPP has been talking about, prompting it to rewrite it and putting it out. That is what APNU is doing. So it's all rhetoric and empty promises. If you listen to Norton, people-centered development, I don't know what that means. People-centered development, because you can talk about people-centered development, but if you're taking away grant from children or free water from the pensioner or not, or only giving land to your people, friends and family like they did, then it can be people-centered development. So Granger says this, and then he does this. He says he throws his full support behind APNU. With the same empty promises and rhetoric, he throws his full support. So he wants to seem like a statement, make a very, lofty statement to young people and everyone else. And then on the other hand, he goes back to the same thing. You're now supporting a party that has demonstrated that it's all about empty rhetoric and racist. That's what you're supporting. He will not comment on any of the progress that we've made. So we don't make empty promises. We said world-class education, we're working on it. And you've seen evidence of it. We said we'll transform the infrastructure, you see evidence of it. We said healthcare, we're working on it, we're going to do it. We put back the children's grant, the pension, double old age pension, the joint services bonus, reduce all his taxes that were part of our promises. We did them. If anything, Granger should have shown his support behind the PPP. He should have said, I endorse the PPP fully, if he actually believed that you should not be swayed by rhetoric and empty promises. Instead, he has gone back to supporting the empty rhetoric and promises. This is what we have. It's just emotional. Emotional. So he comes from a party. And he has an unenviable track record. Came into office with enormous goodwill from all quarters of the country, hoping he would succeed. He was a failure, and Norton would be an even bigger disaster than he was. A bigger disaster for Guyana, should he, which is a near impossibility, because even AFC said he's not electable, but should he become president. Maybe I shouldn't get into this, but I can't help but express my own views on some matters. How could you, look at this. I wrote low-life behavior here on my this stuff. Cancelled AFC members demand reinstatement, threaten legal action. Now, I must take Nigel Hughes' side on this matter. Normally I don't, because I think he's a waste too. But the thing is that I must take his side on the matter. How isn't this low-life behavior? You're just on a ticket for another political party. You're going to be one of their candidates' elections, and you want to retain membership in the other party that's competing against them. And look at they're going to cancel AFC members, demand reinstatement. Isn't this low-life behavior? How could any sensible person say these things? But you can't credit people like Sherrod Duncan with much sense, etc. The same Sherrod Duncan, had a vile rant against Dominic Gaskin. Now Dominic Gaskin, in a minute of his lifetime, would have more integrity than Sherrod Duncan would have in 2 lifetimes. And he says, because Dominic Gaskin dare say that they already lost the election, which they know, and everybody knows this already. And he says they would lose the elections not just because of the progress we've made in Guyana in the last 5 years, but because they knowingly tried to steal the elections. They were all complicit in trying to steal the 2020 elections. They knew they lost. And they persisted with a lie, and they lie not only to Guyana, but to their own supporters. And that's why he had this vile rant against Dominic Gaskin. But a man of his character, this guy was wanted for, I think, Chronicle money or something, like hustling money at Chronicle, wasn't it? There's a story to that effect. Sherrod Duncan, and he is now the moral conscience of the opposition, could have this vile rant. And it was very interesting. I saw an interview that was done by the vice chairman of Region 4, who now supports the People's Progressive Party Civic for the upcoming elections, Sandy. And he was asked several questions, and it's good, if you have not seen what he said, to have a look at it. So he's asked, why are you coming to or supporting the PPP Civic Care finale for another term? And he said, you know, and I'm paraphrasing, my assessment of the PPP in the past did not come out through interaction with them. My assessment was clouded by what I've heard of them. And this is something that we've been saying all along, because what APNU has been pushing all along is the PPP is racist, the PPP will discriminate against you, etc. He said, now I'm capable of making my own decision. I can assess for myself. I have intellect to assess for myself about the nature of political parties, and I want to serve the country. And I believe that being in that camp allows me to pursue this goal of mine, which is to serve the people of our country. And he had a lot to say about the leadership crisis in the People's National Congress. for a person like that walking away from the PNC after 20 years of membership and a senior position in the leadership of the party, he spoke of the crisis in leadership in the party. It's lost its way. And even in its policy making, well, how could you have a my Paul make policy, or a Sherwin Holder make policies on the run for a political party that was formed since 1955 and that had several, even if we disagreed with them, several people of stature, even if we disagreed with their policies, etc. It pains me to see the level to which they've sunk as a political party. Carol Joseph is in charge of, I heard, policy making there too. So, at Congress Place, this is what's happening there. And he spoke of it, and then he dropped a bombshell. He said, you know, I was in charge of the East Coast. I had to collect the SOPs. And so I collected all the SOPs, and I kept record of them, the numbers on the SOPs. And when I went to the Ashmin building there, and they were declaring these numbers, they were very different numbers than were on my SOPs. So they knew that the numbers were wrong. I'm sure he told everyone, these are not the correct numbers. We have them here. But until today, Norton was on a program somewhere in the Caribbean saying about how we rigging elections and we sought to rig the 2020 elections. Here is an insider, a man from the leadership of the PNC who had responsibility for collecting the SOPs on the East Coast, who kept records of those SOPs, saying, I knew when I heard the numbers being called out, I knew that they were false numbers. I knew they were false numbers. And he said, I had two choices to make, was to go back to a community that is pro-APNU, take a different position, or go stick with the integrity part. And he said, I chose the latter because the hope then was they could somehow use the false numbers to win the elections. He was blunt about it. Now here is a person providing evidence of it. We already have the evidence, it's before the court now, and people are charged for it. But if you have Nigel Hughes, unrepentant, Nigel Hughes still saying he can't apologize to the people of the country for the attempted stealing of the elections because he has not done an assessment as yet, then Patterson, who claimed that he saw the SOPs and they showed that they won the elections, and these are the two major leaders in the AFC. How can you believe anything they say? And Norton, as I said before, he is now all around the Caribbean, everywhere in the world, saying that we tried to steal the elections. How can you believe him too? And he, remember one time he said to me he had the SOPs. We met at the Georgetown Club, and I said, why not provide the SOPs? He said he's seen them, and he has them, the SOPs. So that's what you're dealing with. And it all came out. Now, forget PPP supporters. there were many APNU supporters who genuinely believed, people who would have gone on the street maybe and gotten in trouble on the street because of what they heard from these lying leaders who lied to their supporters all the time. They persisted with that lie throughout, and we're going into fresh elections, and they still are carrying this lie into the fresh elections. And here was the man who was collecting the SOP saying on an interview now that this is what happened. And you know what? They will get a free pass on it. They will get a free pass on it because nobody, either the media will not interrogate them the way that they would a PPP government. They would never. They get a free pass, or maybe because people don't know that they're already lying and nobody believes them, that's why they just ignore them. But you can't ignore people who are lying and going back to the election. How would you believe anything else they say? How, if you're a supporter of the PNC, they have no intention of laying out their plans. So they're laying out now some things. For example, I saw Azruddin Mohammed laid out his plans. He launched his party through a video. Can you imagine even the 2x2 parties, the small parties that have three voters, are doing a press conference to talk about, you know, their plans for the future, answer questions from the media. You're launching a party and you're doing it, somebody writes a script for you, you're reading off the script. Have the decency to hold a press conference and answer questions. But you'll get a free pass from the media too. You know, if you can't even answer basic questions before the media, just basic, fundamental questions, how can you ever run a country? But he is running on one ticket: to stay out of jail. That is his ticket, stay out of jail. So his whole campaign, oh, the wicked PPP is discriminating against me. They sanction me. Not that the US government sanctioned him. They sanctioned me. They're spreading lies about me. It was the Reuters who said that he is being investigated for money laundering, drug trafficking, and also gold smuggling. It was Reuters, not the PPP. They're spreading rumors about his people. We didn't take away Prime Minister's visa and the visa for the people associated with him. It's the US government. We didn't tell him to falsify the invoice on the Lamborghini, and now he has trouble because of that. And, you know, he says his new campaign is, oh, I have a lot of money. I don't have to steal if I get into government. But you basically stole 50 million to get rich. He is rich, so you stole money. You stole even the money before you even got into government. So that's your character. So he campaigns on this sort of thing, and it's not really serious, but he doesn't get interrogated on these matters. Or the APNU gets a free pass. I see them all week, the Starbucks News putting out the silly things with their manifesto. So APNU wants to outline initiatives to benefit youth. APNU outline. APNU promises substantial investment in ICT. It's utter nonsense. I'm not going to even just pay too much attention to that. So let me give you Christopher Jones. These headlines are interesting to me when I read them. Like, I'm scanning them today, preparing to go. PNC will always rebound and survive. Christopher Jones. You hear the language, survive. They're fighting for survival. Rebound and survive. Survival. That's it. Campbell says, I don't know what he's doing now, trying to get out, vows support for all opposing forces with hopes of a crippled return of Dr. Ali-led government. A crippled return. So there's no question about the PPP winning the elections again from Campbell. But he hopes that we'd have a hung parliament, which is not going to happen too. But they all know that the PPP is going to win the elections. They're on their own been saying this because they've seen what has happened on the ground. And let me address a couple of issues before I speak about some of the future things. So I saw earlier this week a post from Anand Prasad from the Starbuck News claiming that the government didn't pay him for 6 months now, and that's what we're hoping to, maybe we're using that, the non-payment for their ads, to suppress press freedom. The extremism of it. But this is what we're faced with, these glib, non-factual statements from seemingly smart people. I just wanted to give you an idea. I can go down and disaggregate. 2024, Kaichor News got in ads $202.8 million from the government. Chronicle, 206.5. Starbuck News, 169.1. Guyana Times, 157. So clearly, Kaichor News, Chronicle is state media. Kaichor News got the largest amount of ads, 202 million, just about less than $4 million less than Chronicle. So they got paid, Kaichor News for last year, we got paid 170 million, about 32 million remaining. The Chronicle got paid 148 million or so, so you got about 58 million is owed to the Chronicle. So more is owed to the Chronicle than to Kaichor News. The Starbuck News was paid 133 million. This is from figures, so they got about 36 million outstanding. So less than the Chronicle. And the Times was paid 106, so they got 51 million outstanding. More than is, so we have a bigger debt now to Guyana Times, although Guyana Times got the least ad, than to Starbuck News. But it gives you the magnitude of money spent on these media houses. This is the figure that was supplied to me today by, I think it's the EPI or the government agencies, because I wanted to know, is this true that we are starving people of ads? Imagine Kaichor with all its vileness. Every day they're cussing me, and they got the most ads for all of the private media. This is how much money they're getting. We're practically carrying these papers through ads. And if you look at the Starbuck, we don't ask them their editorial policy to carry pro-government stuff. In fact, they're carrying only anti-government stuff. All the outreaches, Mohammed could have 2 persons. Irfan Ali has 1,000 people. They would ignore his outreach. He got 2 persons, and people go there to collect something, and they put outreach there. Norton just under the Kanji Bridge singing, and he gets a big headline in the Starbuck News. Irfan Ali could be singing everywhere. He doesn't get anything. Headline. That's the thing. We don't tell them what, but look at the ads. And to put that we are starving. So if we use that logic now, we owe more to Times. So we are discriminating against Times. We're discriminating against Times, or Chronicle for that matter, because we owe more to the Chronicle and Times than to Kite News and Starbuck for last year. It is this nonsense that we get all the time, and then people would actually believe it. And next year it would appear in the Press Freedom Index, because what's her name again? The head of the GPA, right? Raghubir, yes, Raghubir. She put that, starving the independent media of funds. The government of Ghana is starving independent media funds. We're practically through government ads carrying these entities that criticize the government every day. That's why I said this is a free country. You ask President Trump is just now withdrawing funds from a number of media entities in the US, saying they don't carry out the national values, they don't promote American interests globally, public radio and all of these things. Would you say the US is a dictatorial country now? GHRA. So I hope that that would be addressed. And Nigel Hughes needs to pay this young lady for her work. I hope he pays the young lady for her campaign ideas. I saw today report Nigel Hughes, AFC under 5 unauthorized use of campaign ideas. They need to pay. So let me talk a bit more about the future. And consistent with what I said earlier, is that we will keep sharing our ideas. They can take the ideas and rework them and put them out. We don't care, because we have already mapped these out. These are part of our plans for the future. They are long-term plans. So I'm not going to go through the past of what we have done, but if you look at what we have done, I just asked Peter Ramsarup to get me the numbers on the hotels that will be opening up within the next year. And 6 international hotels will be open up within the next year. They will add 1,500 rooms, international type rooms, to the numbers that we have now. Just think about that. When we were trying to build a Marriott, we had to do that because nobody wanted to invest in hotels in Guyana. Nobody wanted. Why do you think we had to build a Marriott? Now the Marriott is making a ton of money and stuff. But since we got back into office, look at what changes have been made in the hospitality sector. So several other hotels have been open already, Eden and Pegasus, and more would be built. But 6, by mid next year, 6 more functioning hotels. Apart from the 6, there are about 18 local hotels that are being built that would add another 1,000 rooms, but not international type hotels. And they're spending $20 billion, but these are small hotels, and and they're right across the country. So just imagine in such a short period, within the next year, we'd have nearly 2,500 more hotel rooms, 1,500 of which will be international standards. The amount of people who have to work in these hotels alone by mid next year, they will have to find another maybe 3,500 and 4,000 people. That's jobs, just in that. But which other, I haven't seen them promising anything about the hospitality sector. What are they going to say about hotel development and the job creation in this area? And we now have a hospitality school where we'll be training people at Port Moran to work in these hotels, Guyanese, to work there. So, as I said before, that's going to happen by next year. More jobs there for people. In 3 months, within 3 months, 6 hospitals would be open. 6 hospitals. One was open at Diamond. Within the next 3 months, another 5 will be open. That would, again, you need about 4,000 personnel to work in those. 4,000 people, because with support staff and everything else. That's what's happening now. Just imagine that. So we're not talking about vague things. We have come in, we're delivering already, you're seeing the benefits. The pride issue, the competence issue, the trust issue are all there. Every Guyanese who comes back from abroad can relate to the progress. They don't have to go and look to find the progress in Guyana. They see it visibly in the construction industry, in the services sector, on better community roads that they drive on the highways, on more people owning land and more houses going up. They're seeing this progress. They're seeing more jobs, etc. So that is what we talk about. But what are we going to do in the future? And we have made it clear that there are several plans in different areas. So in terms of communities, I want to aggregate what we anticipate a community to look like. Every community in the country. So first of all, we have to build more communities, because we have a growing number of people who require land and they need support to build their homes. So in the next term, you'd have more communities being built across the country to cater for the demand for land from our people, because more of them are coming of age where they can apply for a house lot, and we have to satisfy that demand. So that's the first thing, getting more plots of lands available to people. And secondly, we're going to create mechanisms now outside of the mortgage benefits that we have done through the taxation system by waiving the corporate tax on income arising from loans up to a certain level, which has saw a reduction in mortgage price. We're going to use the taxation system to give greater allowances, deductibles for people who are building homes. 2, we're going to continue with core home building. 3, we're going to continue expand vastly young professional homes being built and accelerate the pace. And then we are going to support people in financially and through material-wise. We are already doing that through free steel and cement for foundation, but support them financially also to build more homes. So more Guyanese can own homes. And this is coming from a party that takes its promises seriously. It's not just a gaffe session with Norton saying he's going to build 200,000 homes. It is serious. So more communities to cater for, and more homes built in those communities. The access, opening up more lands and doing that, and also helping to build homes. Secondly, expanding and safer existing communities. And this, we can't just invest in new communities. What about people who live right across Guyana? They too need to see improvement in their communities. And so what are the things that we intend to focus heavily on in these communities? First of all, it is drainage. So concrete drains in communities. Massive program of concrete drains in communities across Guyana. Secondly, it's lights in these communities. Big concern of people for security purposes, but already we've procured 100,000 lights that will come in by the end of the year. So their communities are well lit. Recreational facilities in every community. So this could take the form of the playground being, with all of the facilities there, washroom, stadium, with a small stand, pavilion, lights in every one of those community playgrounds, and then recreational facilities like green spaces in those communities. So if you live on an East Coast community, you will have one of the dams going out to the seaside that is now overgrown with bush. You could see it, a pathway, a concrete pathway there, lights, benches, etc. So people have more recreational space in the communities. Security cameras in communities across the country. So it can keep the communities safer, crime-wise, and also solve crimes faster because of this. Police outposts and patrols in these communities. The garbage collection and disposal, vital for these communities. And also parking space, making sure that you tackle issues of pollution, because noise, nuisance, all of these things within communities. That's just some of the ideas. I'm trying to simplify because you can put it in like fancy words, etc. These are the things we want to focus on. So it's drainage, because we are already doing the roads. So it's drainage, well-lit communities, safer communities, recreation. So people can live safer, better quality of life in their own communities. That's what the focus will be. So it is more communities through expansion of the housing program, more and also safer communities by massive investments in these areas that I've just mentioned for the quality of life to improve. So the infrastructure program of the country, we have outlined what the roads, the bridges, the highways that we plan to do, the 4-lane highways, the large number of bridges that will be completed, the new airport, like expansion of the airport, new airports like in Lethem, the power plants, the port facilities, the community roads, the playgrounds, etc. And so what is the purpose of the infrastructure expansion, the big infrastructural plan? So there are 3 aims that we have here. One is to support economic growth. You need good quality infrastructure to support economic growth. Economic growth leads to higher income from people. Whether you're a big business or a small business, you need good quality infrastructure. And it supports more income and income diversification. So that's the first purpose of building infrastructure. It's not building it for the show. It's building it to serve a purpose, to serve a purpose, which is more jobs, more income for our people, more investment opportunities to open up those. So if we build a road like we're building now from Crabble Creek to Oriala, it will open up more lands there too, apart from everything else. More economic benefits. We can put those lands into cultivation. If we're building like through the adaptation program, the Hope Light Canals, that will open up nearly 90,000 acres of land, which is more land for economic investments. So that's the first purpose of investment, the infrastructure. The second is social welfare. So health and education, the infrastructure for health and education will support more social welfare for people. The third area is improved quality of life. The one that I spoke of is the sports facilities, the recreational facilities, the community roads, the ease of transit. Because if you're spending half an hour less on the road, it's half an hour more of your time for other leisurely pursuits or other type of pursuits. That's the other area. And then infrastructure to keep us safe, resilient, climate resilient. So those four areas are the objectives for us to build the infrastructure. Then, infrastructure just for the purpose, not a vanity thing. It is not just because we want to spend money, but it helps these four objectives, which are vital for good quality of life for our people. Then, income support and economic diversification. So we need to take more jobs to the outlying areas of our country. Here in Region 4 and to some extent in Region 3, we already have a lot of jobs. So we have a dedicated plan which we have laid out. So the plan is to support small business development right across the country. To create and how do we do that? We do that through the Innovation Hub, the Diversification Support Center, the Development Bank to make zero interest loans to people right across Guyana so they can invest more. They can have the support services to invest in right across the country. We will then also redirect some of the momentum into places like Berbice on the oil and gas industry. Right now it's been concentrated around the Demerara area because most of the facilities here, but we're already saturated labor-wise in these areas. So if you take, for example, the new gas development hub that will be done, it will have a major impact on regions 5 and 6 for people there, like a lot of the Wales and other development would have had on Region 4 and Region 3. Major shift in focus of some of the larger projects to the outlying areas to lend momentum to these areas. What would this do? This, along with the opportunity for people to invest more in instruments created by the government, would allow more people to earn more money, to have better paying jobs right across our country for people who need those jobs, and it would lead also to expansion of entrepreneurial base of our country. So that's another big focus that we want to look at. The investments in education and health. For example, health. People see it just as these 12 hospitals we're building. And it's not a cost, just a cost to us. It is a cost, yes, because we're spending more. But what are the opportunities and the jobs that we can create in the health sector? So we've already removed the corporate tax for health sector investment. So we have a ton of private investment in healthcare, so it's creating income for people and also jobs for them. But consider this, we're gonna now expand the manufacture of pharmaceuticals, manufacture of vaccines, and other supplies, medical supplies in Guyana. When we get our public sector healthcare to world-class standards, which will be soon, and also we get the private investments, you're gonna see a massive influx of tourists who come here for medical reasons, because our costs will be competitive with, say, the United States and many parts of the world where they're going now to secure these operations. We are now going to expand beyond the health sector to incentivize like cosmetic care, like healthcare, and those areas that the government wouldn't focus on. So it's a whole industry we're trying to create that will generate more jobs. The health sector personnel that we need to train alone for these new ventures will be about 5,000 Guyanese who will have to be trained to work in these areas, and better paying jobs, both in research, in delivery of healthcare services, all kinds, in manufacturing. That's what we're trying to create, an industry around the health sector. And that's the thinking. That's how you become sustainable. And you just don't, it doesn't become just a cost, but an opportunity and an income earning sector in the economy. It lends itself to economic diversification. So we talk a lot about agriculture. So agriculture is one of the pillars for the diversification, but you can diversify into the provision of health services. It could be a major earning sector for the country, and a sector in which we can find a ton of jobs, and it could be sustainable in the long run. In the long run, a lot of the research centers now, because of our favorable environment, they want to come here too. The same in education. Just imagine if we can get our education standards up to the level. You know how many services, we're a small country, we can then make education services a major export for Guyana, outside of what we are doing to bring up the quality of education to our own people. But we can hit critical mass quickly because of scale in Guyana. We can do so, especially if you're using AI and other online tools. And then with greater level of connectivity and incentivizing more health or education service providers to be established here, given that they don't have to pay any corporate tax if they establish here. It could help to impregnate local people who want to do the same thing, and with ideas and also energy and capital to also become a global provider of education services. It's that vision that we have, not just the education sector in a static way. And that's what we are working towards in the future. When we talk about AI and a digital society, we're talking about using our cheap energy for maybe data centers. We can use that again with an innovation park. You know, I met a group of young Guyanese. I think I mentioned it sometime before. When I was speaking at the oil and gas conference that was held at the Marriott. And they came to see me afterwards, and I said to them, why not put forward some ideas? Like, what would you like, if you're talking about incentivizing new technology and innovation, especially in this sector, what would you need from the government policy-wise and incentive-wise and investment-wise to do this. They put together since then ideas and some brilliant ideas. Because we were prepared right there, I said to them, even before they started speaking, I said, this was what we were working on with India when we were thinking about a tech park, even when I was president, about a tech park. But now it might be even more, because at that time, AI wasn't such a big thing. But now we may be able to advance the concept of the tech park into like an innovation center, an innovation village, where the government makes the investment in basic infrastructure like we're doing. We're spending now $6 billion at Fowles on the East Coast to build the roads and the park there for industrial purposes at the back of Fowles, you know, for manufacturing and other things. We can easily do that for tech services. So all kinds of tech services, fintech, AI, etc. And they locate in this area. They hire people, they bring people from abroad to work and train our people. That could be a major, major thing. And that's going to be in our manifesto too. I didn't see the others talking about it, but we are putting that in our manifesto. That's a major, major thing for those who want to go into the advanced technology sector. But they will not only serve our national needs, because we will need major service from those people in the national rollout of our digital plan. We need it for the airports, because we'd have a fully digital, automated, paperless airport. We'll need it to run our banking system, which will now have digital banking throughout the country. And so ease of transaction. We'll need it to run that system that the police are working on now, tech services for rolling out the cameras, the command centers, the predictive softwares that will run on them, the facial recognition software in the security sector. We'll need it for the ID card purposes that I mentioned earlier. We're automating all the services now in the Ministry of Home Affairs, like police records and GRO records and prison records and everything else. You will be able to have government at your fingertips, so you don't have to go and join a line any longer. You can apply for a lot of services online. So we need the tech services to support all of these things from people. It creates an opportunity for a lot of our people to be trained in and provide those services. So a park of that nature that breeds innovation, but not just innovation for Guyana that they can sell globally, but could provide the support services we need to run a practically digital society that will keep our people safe, secure, good level of services. And we'll need it too in education. I just spoke of using AI and online tools to tailor individualized program for every one of our children. It's a huge undertaking. That's why we need that back-end service. In technology, in healthcare, the new technology would need a lot of those people. So this is something that is important. I wanted to talk a bit about it because we are not looking at the society of the future in a static way. You know, somebody talk about healthcare. It's just, yes, healthcare, global, but it's also an opportunity, investments, job creation, a sale of services. It's an industry we're trying to create that will both provide the best services to our people, but you can earn from too. And the same thing with all of the other sectors. It is because we have been organic in the creation of our plans. We don't farm it out to an individual to generate our plans, or it's not AI generated, our plans of the future. We can talk about this, but this is important for us. I'm really looking forward to like the financial sector innovation that will transform this country. Simplify transaction from your phone. You can open a bank account. You can bank from your phone. Just imagine people who live in the hinterland or anywhere on the coast. You don't have to go into the banks and all of that. It's just something that I'm anxiously waiting for us to roll out. We've been planning for it. It's now there's so many people supplying the financial technology to go this route, but we are going to pressure the banks using the central bank and financial sector reform, pressure the commercial banks to introduce new tools like these that will simplify banking services and make people, they can get financing easier. Of course, protection of our patrimony, a lot of that has to do with investment in the army, in the police. We need to protect our exclusive economic zone, our territory, major investments in the army and the police to do that through a whole range of technology, including drone technology that would patrol our borders and also our maritime boundaries, so that we can have real-time information on people who are stealing our fisheries resources. Now they do that, who are infringing on our sovereignty, the drug traffickers, that sort of investment there, outside of the investment that we're making to keep people safe in their homes, but also protecting our patrimony, the natural resources, our borders. Major investment in that in the future, but using technology now. In the past, it would have been impossible to do that, but the technology has grown significantly that with reduced costs, you can do much more in this area, but not only in protecting our borders and our exclusive economic zone, but also protecting our water resources, the forestry, knowing if they have illegal mining and all of this taking place, using technology and real-time technology to tell us this so we can have enforcement action. If we also, if they have illegal airstrips and drug traffickers fly in and land there, we'd be able to know immediately. So a lot of investment in that area too, in security. Somebody asked me about youth, and I want to repeat what I said last week and in London. We're not going to just, I see some people talk like the other parties because they have to convince young people that young people matter to them, given their track record, like the PNC. We don't, because we have lived it. So I've said to young people already, apply for your house lots. Don't come and tell me, young people issue is just the football, because that's what they seem to be going down again there. That route, the APNU and the others, we're going to allow you to do some drama, the theater and football. I want you to apply for the scholarship. That's our policy. Apply for the scholarship, apply for the training, apply for your house lot. If you don't have a job, we'll work with you to find you a job, that sort of thing. Make sure that you are part of this society. Of course, the sports and everything else doing it. I don't want to say we have to create a special facility for young people for loans, like APNU just said. They'll create a grant or a fund. They didn't say whether it's a loan or not, a fund for young people. Well, we had that too. We had the SLED program. It was to help people. Guess who? Christopher Jones. He was a relatively young man too. He got the money for the barber chair. And it was given only to politically connected people. So the 165 million went to one APNU MP in Region 9 to distribute, not to ordinary people there. It had to go through the APNU MP. And then, like the Figueras got money too. They only the connected and members of parliament, etc., got the money. In our case, we go for across the board system. You don't need to, if you apply for the scholarship, we don't check who you're connected to. You get your scholarship, which political party you voted for, or how you look, or whatever, or what's your religion. We don't care. about that. And the same thing when we have a banking institution, development bank. Young people too, we expect them to apply for the loan there, the zero interest loan, to start their business. We don't think a little fund, some will get small grants too, but a little fund that will go to only a few people, like what APNU did. That's how we see youth issues unfolding. I have a ton more things, but I think it's already kind of getting late. Yeah, it's already 2 hours I've been speaking. So these are just a snippet of the many ideas we have that you have heard us speak of, would be in our manifesto that we intend to implement. It's that future that we are working towards. A future that will keep our people safe, more prosperous, get them more jobs, etc. We need the confusion. Look at when I was at Albion too. You know, about 5 sugar workers said to me, we've been trying to talk to some others because they mentioned cost of living here, a couple of people, and they're pushing that. And we've been telling them to look at what the government has done. But most people don't even factor that in. Because we've had oil prices skyrocket since we come into office. We have had COVID, which pushed up the cost of food globally, and because a lot of productive capacity was taken out. We've had all sorts of economic shocks. We have had a massive increase in freight charges globally, moving from like $3,000 to import one container from China. It went as high as $20,000, so that gets passed through. We've had to deal with all of that as a government. But how did we deal with it? We didn't do like some of the other neighboring counterparts. We kept electricity price constant in the 4 years by subsidizing electricity $70 million US. That's only on the price. Forget the other infrastructure that we're putting in electricity. And now we have a plan to cut electricity price by 50% when the project is completed next year. So we have a plan, and we kept it constant. No increase. So you can't talk about cost of living increase because electricity prices went up. Suriname, their price went up. Suriname used to get from the hydro. Trinidad, gas producer, their prices went up. Globally, the prices went up. We kept it constant. Water, we kept it constant. We absorbed all the costs. We are building out now 13 water treatment plants and other things, and didn't increase a single cent on the cost of water. Not a single cent. The price is the same like it was in 2020. So APNU can go and talk about increase there too. On gasoline and diesel, we're subsidizing that 500 to 600 Guyana dollars per every gallon you buy, because we removed the 50% excise tax, implicit subsidy. No change there. On internet, the bills came down from the past, or you're getting more bandwidth for the same price since we got into office because of the liberalization of telecom. So those are things you spend money on as a family. Electricity, water, you spend on transportation or gasoline for when you buy, right? You spend on internet. And those who now apply for mortgages, their rates came down. They're getting more. So we've been challenged with food prices. Yes, it's true, but a lot of it is because freight went up, import shock. We import a lot of the food prices. And sometimes it fluctuates in the market with the local produce. But outside of that, which other government has done that to tackle cost of living? So I'd be surprised. I want to see what they will say about that, because they would have never done it. When we said we were subsidizing electricity, Norton said he removed the subsidy, and then he walked it back when he realized it was unpopular, that he would stop subsidizing the electricity. If they'd done that, people's rates would have gone up. So the guys there wanted me to talk a bit more about it because they said a lot of people don't see that. They go and they're very popular. They come and say, oh, the price of potatoes went up and it might have gone up. It's true. And we're looking now for the supply response. If we now have to bring in bulk goods and the freight went up, then we have to produce that here, like onions. We're gonna, in 2 years' time, I think we can replace all of the onions. We'd be able in another 2 years, all the black eye and the red bean that we are importing now, we'd start producing right here. The corn, soya, etc. in another couple of years. So prices can be lowered right here for especially the bulk items. Our corn, our soya, we import almost all of our cooking oil, a lot of it, soya oil. We can start pressing our own beans here. They're making the oil right here in Guyana with a factory once we start producing. So we're working to address that in a methodical way. That this is how we work. And so what are they going to campaign on that too? They can't do that because they would have done nothing, absolutely nothing. Granger would say, that's now my business, like he told the rice farmers. So I can speak about a lot of those things, but today I'll end there. Thank you.
Dr. Judah Williams, Guyana Chronicle. Chairman of the NTC, Derek John, and leader of the Liberty and Justice Party have petitioned for GCOM to prevent Azzuddin Mohammed from using the jaguar as its symbol on the grounds that it is a sacred symbol of the indigenous people. Do you wish to comment on this? And a follow-up from what you talked about earlier with Mr. Mohammed going around in communities and just complaining about himself and not presenting any plans for development. But the presidential hopeful has been heavily criticizing and distorting public policies and services. What are your views on this?
A presidential hopeful? Who is this hopeful? Azzuddin Mohammed. Oh, okay. I didn't want to start my question and answer with having to deal with Azzuddin Mohammed because you know my view on him. And I said it at the beginning. He is misleading a lot of people. A lot of people will get into trouble because of him. Very selfish. And he is running to stay out of jail eventually not because of trouble here, it's just in Guyana, globally. You know, last week, or was it the week before, I saw the police doing an investigation. I never really, because I don't follow on a daily basis what the police would do because they need to maintain law and order. So we don't, contrary to the belief on the other side, we don't talk to the police and steer them who to investigate or not. They have to do their work, investigate all crime and ensure that people are brought to account. So I saw last week or week before, the police reopened a case and they were working on for a while paper shorts case. The police didn't say anything about who the suspect is. They just reopened and started an investigation. Then I saw Azzuddin Mohammed put out a statement. Nobody called him a suspect. That he is not a suspect. And that it's a discrimination against him. The paper short matters. So I'm wondering if the police investigating a murder, they didn't even mention your name in the investigation, and you come out with a statement to say, I'm not a suspect, but they may be trying to make me a suspect. You have a lot to fear. it tells you it tells you a lot about him and his unease, because it's a routine investigation. Police do that all the time. They investigate people and they have to get evidence before they're charged, and they'd have to probably make the evidence public. So it's quite an interesting thing I saw. You know, like somebody take a stone and pelt in a pig pen, like throw the stone in a pig pen, like to my left, and the pig on the, well, to my right, and the pig on the left started squealing. And so here was a very interesting thing for me, that a person would come out like that, not being accused of anything, but himself saying, I'm not guilty. That's one. Two, the symbol for political parties is not a matter that a political party can decide on. That's a matter for GCOM. So GCOM can take into consideration the concerns of everyone, but ultimately it is GCOM who will make that decision. Now personally, I think it's a desecration, but whether he gets the symbol or not, it's not a big concern to the People's Progressive Party. It doesn't matter for us, really. But I can understand the concern of the NTC and Schumann and Derek John and Schumann and many others who have complained that it's a national symbol. I can understand their concern. We don't make that decision. GCOM will. The PPP will go to the election with the cup as our symbol. And we have gone to elections with the cup as our symbol forever. And we won those elections in the past, and we'll win the elections here with the cup as our symbol. If symbols alone were so important, and I saw, by the way, 24 political parties applied for symbols. This is lunacy in a country like ours. And look at the people who are applying. It's like from the criminal, downright criminal, well, you have international criminal, local criminal, and all the way to the lunatic, the whole spectrum, from one end to the other end. I'm telling you, full-fledged lunatics have applied for symbol. And people trivialize this. This is not about a symbol or a political party. It's about what you're gonna do for the people of the country in your tenure. That's what's about. But people love to see their name, maybe in the limelight. But it's a free country. Symbols and who contests the elections, that's a matter for GCOM. We're ready. What was the second issue? Okay.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. You give us a snippet of what's to come or your government's plans for various sectors. Can you give us a snippet of the government's plans for Amerindian development?
Yes, so the key things in Amerindian development, we have worked in the past 5 years to reverse the neglect that the Amerindian community suffered under APNO and open discrimination that they faced. If you listen to Schumann, he told you about the racist comments that were made in relation to Amerindian lands when he was there. We experienced that in the parliament. We saw the neglect in terms of reduction in employment, reduction in funding, and no job opportunities there. So the Amerindian communities can expect that, particularly since they are concentrated in regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, improve infrastructure. That's the first. That's the first area that we have focused on and we will continue to focus on. So we started off in connecting regions. So that's why the Moruca-Quebana Road is so important, to continue and to complete a concrete road between those communities that will improve ease of transit but economic activities along that corridor. The same thing from Matakai all the way to Matthews Ridge, and from Maburuma settlement all the way to Wauna. These are the three major projects that we're working, and then connecting to the villages in Region 1. We've also started working on the village roads. So if you look at several villages in 1 and 9, you would see that within the villages, we are building additional roads now. So infrastructure is important. I can also speak the same about Region 9, like, completion of the Linden-Lethem Highway, and also all the roads going south in the villages, there. In Region 7, it's the same thing, a lot of focus on roads and other types of economic infrastructure. In the mountains in Region 8 particularly, it will cost billions of dollars, but we intend to complete that project. I saw recently the tender went out for the bridge, some of the bridges connecting Region 9 with 8 and then up into the mountains. And it was a substantial sum of money, but we have to connect all those villages in the mountains through Region 9 back to the Georgetown. That would lower cost of living significantly because you don't have to fly things into these communities, etc. So road connectivity will improve economic activities, bring down cost of living for hinterland regions. Secondly, it is education. Education, look how the secondary schools, access to secondary schools, and also like in Quebana, in Hausororo, we are building the 2 modern schools there. The same thing is happening in Karasabay, in many other parts of the country. And these are schools that cost over $1 billion. Big schools I'm talking about. You've seen some new schools being signed in Linden recently. I think President Ali is going to St. Ignatius. He's doing something in St. Ignatius expansion. So school network, but education also. In each region, we are going to build not just the Amerindian, those regions, not the hinterland regions, but coastal regions. For the Gold Scholarship, we build these technical centers where people who are doing, through the online program, the scholarships, they can go into the region and do all the labs, etc., right there, without having to come to Georgetown or come to the University of Guyana. That's all. And then improve high-speed internet in all of the villages. So right in the villages, we can do a university education from every village across this country, including in the most remote part in the country. The children there can do a university education just from those villages. So improve access to tertiary education and improvement in primary and secondary education in those 1, 7, 8, and 9, and of course across the country. But I'm talking about those areas now. Healthcare, upgrading the health centers, but now we are building these 4 major modern health facilities in 1, 7, 8, and 9. When we speak of the 12 hospitals we're building, The 4 are in these regions. And we've awarded 3 so far, and we now just have to award the one for Region 7 in the upper mass end. That's what we're going to be awarded there. Of course, Bartica in Region 7 too will be completely rehabilitated, or we build a new hospital. We're making that decision now, but most likely it will be a new hospital in Bartica too, one similar to what we're doing at Diamond. So that's healthcare. Support for economic activities through planting material, tractors and trailers, which we have done already for some of the hinterland villages for agriculture, co-investing in processing facilities for many of those villages so the produce can be processed. So more income generating activities and employment generating activities. I can go down the long list. Land titling, of course, continuation of the land titling activities. All of these things would be done in the hinterland regions. I don't want to, it's late in the evening, and so I don't want to go through everything here, but we've mapped all of this out. We've looked at the costs already. We're not like the other parties. If you ask them like how much would something cost, I can tell you like the hospital in Bartica, we're going through the cost of it already and saying how many persons would use that hospital versus Diamond if we need to keep the same scale or a slightly smaller scale, and what we should focus it on more. The same thing in upper mass. We are looking at details already of these. We're not just talking about it. The route, for example, for the road from Goshen to the bridge, the 4-lane road, we have laid out that route already. We've done the studies already there. So you can hit the ground almost running as soon as we get back into office for Region 3. And so we won't have another traffic jam by the time 2030 we go for our another fundraiser there. You'd have another 4-lane road access there to support it. A lot of these things are already in train. We're working on them. So a lot of continuation of this sort of thing.
Secondly, can you say if the public servants will get their 8% increase before or after election?
No, it got to be before. I hope Ashton Singh pays it before. It doesn't make sense you pay the public servants after. I think it's going to be before. And also on the public assistance, the ministry has said that they're hoping by the end of June that people will get their books across all of the regions. They've had this issue with migrating some data. I hope that everyone get their books for the public assistance and all of those areas, because a number of people have been raising this with me. And for those who are applying for the one-off grant for the NIS, we now have a system through which they can apply. I don't know how many are applying for those. Who have more than 500 contributions but less than 750, they can now apply and get a substantial grant there too. I hope that they would apply for that. Okay.
Dr. Jagdeo, Cordell Jones from Livewire News. Leader for ANOG has been facing some criticism over a statement he made that his party is willing to join with sanctioned Azadin Mohammed, but they will not be collecting any money. Could you share your thoughts on this view?
I actually think this guy is looking for money. That's my personal view. ANOG is really nothing. I shouldn't be saying this about political parties because we should be respectful of all political parties. But in reality, I don't think Ralph Ramkaran and Timothy Jonas and many of the others are part of that leadership anymore. We have an individual there who got into trouble because of dishonesty, who I said before, in the last local government elections, got 3 votes in a constituency in which he was born in New Amsterdam. he is looking, he can't put, I don't think he could put forward a list. So he's looking to latch on to someone and collect money. Anybody who says, we're not going to collect money, but we will formulate policies together. He wants freeness. That's it. That's my view about these guys. And they've been looking around, shopping around a few of these parties for somebody to adopt them. And he is one of those. And I said, this is a nitpicking nuisance. You know, everything, the guy who runs ANOC. And so I wouldn't put it past him. He is the one who speaks a lot about corruption, you know, government corruption. And he, imagine someone is accused of drug trafficking, money laundering, and also gold smuggling, who the U.S. said they have credible mountain load of evidence has smuggled 10,000 kilograms of gold, evaded 50 million US in taxes in 5 years. And he has no qualm about working with that individual, but he's very concerned about the two persons stealing a vial of drugs in the hospital. That's what he is concerned about. He's a nitpicker. I don't waste my time with these ANOC people and stuff. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo. You mentioned earlier on in the press conference that you're looking to roll out a transportation grant to help school children. Can you perhaps give some more details on what that might look like?
Leave that for the manifesto. We can't tell you everything. You're going to see APNU promise it next week too. But it would be, the idea is, how do we take away the burden of funding education from the family? So children, every child in the country, whether you're poor or your parents are poor or wealthy, they have opportunities for a good quality education. So we are now supporting, because the We Care grant, we've returned that to the children. We have this school uniform grant, so we now will have to increase the school uniform grant. So if we do that, we can help with the uniform. The next thing is getting the child to school. We might not be able to cover all the costs, but we gave, maybe on an annual basis, a grant to the parents to offset transportation costs. When the child gets to school, we have to expand school feeding program so they can get a good meal in school if they need it. Then we free tuition at every level, all the way to university. Then we're going to pay for their exams too. So we can remove all the burden. When a person has a child now, they don't have to worry whether they're rich or poor, that the child would get a deficient education, because the government would fund it all. Now, people may want better for their children. If they can afford it, some of them may say, I'm not taking the food from the school, or they don't like the biscuit or whatever else. That's your choice. Or they may choose not to collect the grant if they wish, but at least it's there for those who need it. It's a commitment to the children and the people of the country. And this is an investment, a major investment in our future. It would yield years from now massive, massive benefits. It looks like a big cost now because the budget has grown from 53 to 185 billion and it will grow even further. But it is it would yield multiple fold benefits in the future. Like I spoke of the industries that we can generate if we have good quality, high quality labor and high quality education, which we're committed to delivering. And so that is the philosophy behind us trying to look at what other costs parents bear, you know? So transport has always been a little concern of parents. You don't want to go back to government running buses and stuff like that. You know what happens with those things. When the government puts in a bus, we do help with buses. So there are lots of communities in the outlying area, like in the mines in Linden, the government will buy a bus and give it to them. Like along the highway, like Kurukururu and stuff like that, you buy a bus. So you do that, and then the communities utilize the bus. So where that could be done, we will continue doing it, like providing the buses. There have been a large number of buses bought. You don't see, and we actually bought them. Not get like some old buses that people donated. Remember Granger 5Bs, and then he took away the grant? We bought quite a number of buses and given it to communities that they are running in the Amerindian communities, etc. But these are the smaller, not the 30-seaters. So we can continue doing that for communities that can run them, and then we will also do this grant.
Just quickly on transportation, you mentioned before in other press conferences that you want to tackle traffic congestion. Are there any plans for any sort of new public transportation system or improving the current transportation system?
So the public transportation system, there is this idea which we had a long time ago, which we have not totally discarded. Because the focus now has been to deal with the immediate situation. If we did not build the Heroes Highway, just imagine having to go up to the East Bank now, or the airport. Just imagine with the amount of vehicles. Already the Heroes Highway is congested. Just imagine. So we're rushing now to deal with the large influx of vehicles. And remember, we plan to lower taxes on vehicles in the next term. So you might even have more vehicles being imported. So we have to keep pace with that. And people want their own vehicles. Now you can't go to collect your girlfriend with a bicycle anymore. You know, it's a very different era. People want their own vehicles, or vice versa. Or maybe because now a lot of women are working more and doing better than some men. So they may have to pick them up. So that's one area. We're rushing to get the infrastructure in, better traffic management, using now the electronic means to try to keep speed down, less fatalities on the road, to put a lot of eyes more on the road that are not police eyes, you know, that could not harass people and all of that, but still maintaining order on the road. A lot of focus on that. Here, we had this idea in the areas that are congested. So for the rest of the country, it should be fine because we intend to expand the road network that would alleviate congestion in Region 2, widening the road by 8 feet and repaving it. Region 3, another 4-lane road. Region 5, 4-lane. Region 6, a 4-lane already awarded. And then 4-lane all the way to the airport. So that should alleviate some. Public transportation, on the other hand, we had this idea between Golden Grove and Diamond. Over 300,000 people live of our population, and including Georgetown. So if we could have a rail connection there, light rail, that's what we were thinking about. We studied it a long time back. And then a not ring road, but a tram system that runs with electricity that would come around the city. So if you connect from the road, from the rail, and you have a station, say somewhere by Ogle, and then you join a ring tram, then you jump on it, you can get into various points in the city, without congestion. And you can do that, or you can develop parking outside of the city and still use the rail to come in. So it's being looked at seriously, but it is not, nothing has been finalized on it as yet, but we are looking at it seriously. We had ideas, some people said, why not go over, reclaim the land and go over the seawall? Go over the seawall, reclaim land, because we had some proposals to reclaim large stretch of land over the seawall, and some of that may happen in the future for recreational purposes just outside Marriott and all the way to the Kitty foreshore for economic development, like a huge area there reclaimed. And just imagine large beaches and lots of recreational things out there. People can go, like bars and different facilities like restaurants, seafood restaurants, all kinds of stuff there. And the same thing is being, if you listen to President Ali, we're thinking about the Vreden Hoop facility. That old wharf there, to develop it into a tourist center, maybe with restaurants, etc. So if you have, for example, like with the new bridge completed, you'd have a lot of river cruises, the boats. We're looking to incentivize. People run regular river cruise. You can go and join it. You eat on board. You take a cruise up the river. So you need places for them to dock, and maybe you can go and dock there on that side of the river and for recreational purposes. So a lot of these plans we're not even talking about, but we're working on them behind the scenes. But it's exciting about how we can improve the leisure for people, have more opportunities for them for different sorts of things.
Good afternoon, Dr.
Yeah,
Jagdeo.
good afternoon.
Banu Manakchan from the Guyana Times. Just a few follow-ups on my colleague's question. Is road overpass part of your plans? And also on the issue of road network and public transportation, is the government focusing on addressing animals on the roadway?
What on the roadway?
Animals, stray animals.
Okay,
We've
yeah,
had an
yeah.
issue, a fatal accident in New Amsterdam recently, as well as on the Heroes Highway. You see animals there
Yeah.
regularly. Is that something you're looking
So
at?
the thing is that a lot of these, the NDCs have to enforce a lot of this issue. So they're like really penalties already for the animals on the road, but they're not being enforced. So clearly greater enforcement, particularly along highways. And people have to be held more responsible for allowing some people just put their animal on the side of the road and go home. They just leave them there to graze all day. So clearly lots have to change, and but this is where media also should help. It's not just about government doing everything, because why don't the media name and shame people who park all of their equipment on the road or disadvantage a whole community? You could go every week and take out their equipment, put it in your papers, and put it online, and draw attention to it. So, and then go to the NDC chairman and say, why is this happening? I've seen very little of that, even online. But every time a man parks his vehicle on the road, I don't even know about it. What is the government doing about it? So that we need to look at that more. People need to be held more responsible for their action. So that's one. It has to change. Attitudes would have to change too. You can't just deposit something. But we said already, I didn't address that again. We said there are 3 types of facilities we want to develop that could deal with that. Like, not the ponds, you would have to have ponds for those animals. But how do we deal, for example, with businesses next to homes? A lot of people have come to us and say, why not in every village have an industrial area where we can relocate the business? Why not have a commercial area? Like at Hope, We're thinking about that just by the school, a nice recreational area there with business to go out on the beach and stuff like that. You can come out onto the beach, a recreational area. And then we're doing that many parts of the country. And then commercial areas for paid parking. So if you have 10 trucks, you go and pay a fee to park there. Your trucks are not sitting on the roadside. You go and collect your trucks from there, which we're working on already for across the country. So that hopefully will improve. When I spoke about working in communities to upgrade the communities, it means also doing that to see that the communities remain cleaner and not congested, etc. So clearly, there are lots more to be done in that regard. A lot of this has to do with enforcement, and it requires a societal response, a societal, not a government response. Your neighbor or the person himself saying, I'm not going to allow my animal to go elsewhere because it's disadvantaging people. So that's one. And then overpass. You asked me about overpass. So we were thinking about the bridge. There was a proposal to do an overpass, but the proposal came in at $30 million US. So we may very well do the overpass later, but right now, so their traffic will come, integrate with their roundabout, and then come down, and we built a 4-lane connector to the Ogle bypass, a 4-lane. So you can come there, come off the bridge, and then hit the 4-lane and go up to all the way to Ogle. So you can come into the city from that end, you can come through the Heroes Highway, or you can come off the bridge and go back onto the old road. So we decided to go this route first because we wanted to concentrate on taking the Heroes Highway all the way to the airport first. And then later we can come back and do the overpass and connections. So remember, we have limited resources. It's all funded from the budget. We didn't take a loan for those projects, the Heroes Highway. We are funding it from the budget, like the same way we funded the road from Crane to the bridge from the budget. So when you see the budgetary expenditure, that's where a lot of the money is going into those projects too. So that was the idea. We wanted to get to the airport with a 4-lane road first, and then come back and improve it. We also have to resurface the highway. You know, we'd have to put an asphalt layer over the entire highway, the Heroes Highway.
Okay, you mentioned the introduction of a transport grant for kids, but can you say what the Because We Care cash grant would look like in the new term?
All right, well, you're going to see how it looks, right? But we want to focus. That was a promise we made, and we fulfill it. We fulfilled that promise. We need to move on to new promises now, so we want to move on to other things.
Sir, remain at 50.
Wait until, but it means whatever the outcome is, there will be more money going to the household. So that's not going to supplant, right? The cash care would not supplant the transportation allowance. The transportation allowance would be incremental to that. So whatever the outcome, parents are going to receive more money on an annual basis to support their children's education from the government.
Finally, a follow-up to the EID card. Can you say what's causing the delays since last year there were reports?
They're doing some integration, because what we want is to make sure that all the systems are compatible. So right now, I spoke with them recently, and they said, we want to make sure that the passport and the ID, that their databases integrate. And so, because we're working parallel on various things, like Home Affairs is being done, we want to make sure that all the work can interface with each other. And so a lot of focus has been on integration. So that's the hardest thing to do. The integration to make sure that we can work separately, but the platforms can talk to each other and share information. Once you get that right, the rollout of the card is easy. It's just going out, taking people's picture, and then each of these cards have an embedded chip, right? So it's chip-based and can have a lot of information stored there. We could even store people blood type and all of that in it. So if you get into an accident or something and you go to the hospital, they know your blood type immediately, so you don't have to go and get tested, or you get a wrong, wrong testing and give you wrong blood and stuff. A lot of information can be stored on this car. That's where it's going, and that's why the delay is taking place. Okay, thank you very much.